The Texas sun burned down on the Sweetwater auction grounds, turning the dust into a fine powder that seemed to hang in the air, thick and almost suffocating. The crowd buzzed with excitement, the kind of energy that comes when big money is on the line, when legends are made or broken in the blink of an eye. This wasn't just any auction. It was the kind that could make or break reputations, where fortunes were won and lost with a single bid. Jack Carson leaned against the weathered fence that separated the buyers from the horses, his hat pulled low over his eyes, hiding the storm that raged beneath his calm exterior. The years had not been kind to him. His hands, once steady and confident, now trembled ever so slightly, a reminder of the tragedies that had shaped him into the man he was today. The ranch, his pride and joy, had long since been sold off, each piece of land stripped away as he withdrew from the world. He had once been the face of the arena, his name whispered in awe by those who knew true horsemanship, but now he was just a shadow, standing in the background, watching from the sidelines. His gaze, however, was not on the crowd or the high-end bidders parading around in their polished boots and crisp shirts. His eyes were fixed on one horse, the one who stood at the center of the auction ring like a king in exile. Thunder Ray. The stallion was magnificent. His coat shimmered like polished mahogany, and his eyes, dark and unblinking, seemed to pierce the very soul of anyone who dared look too closely. His bloodline was legendary, his spirit untamed, but it was more than just the horse's physical beauty that drew Jack in. There was something else, something in the way Thunder Ray carried himself, something that Jack recognized all too well. It was the same fire, the same unbroken will that had once been in his own mare, Cassidy, the one he had loved and lost. Jack could feel the old pain creeping up on him as his fingers clenched around the weathered wood of the fence. Thunder Ray's presence stirred memories he had buried for years, memories of a life he had tried to forget. But the horse, standing there so regal and untouchable, felt like a ghost from his past. Liam Donovan strode into the auction ring with the kind of swagger only someone with money and power could have. He was dressed in an impeccably white shirt, his boots gleaming under the harsh sun, and he carried himself like the world was his to command. A cattle baron with a reputation for never losing, Donovan had a tendency to treat everything he owned like it was a trophy. And Thunder Ray was no exception. Donovan smiled at the crowd, raising his chin in a gesture of self-assurance that made Jack's stomach churn. He wasn't here for the horse, not really. He was here for the spectacle, for the attention, and for the power that came with owning something as majestic as Thunder Ray. The auctioneer began the proceedings, but Jack didn't hear the words. His attention was entirely consumed by the stallion. Thunder Ray shifted slightly, as though sensing the eyes of the crowd on him. He looked across the arena, his gaze passing over the buyers, the spectators, and then, just for a moment, his eyes locked with Jack's. Jack's heart skipped a beat. There it was again, the recognition, the same spark he had seen in Cassidy's eyes so many years ago. It was as if Thunder Ray knew him, as if he understood the history between them. Jack felt his breath catch in his throat, and for a brief second, he wasn't just a man standing on the sidelines. He was a man confronting the ghosts of his past, staring into the eyes of the future. But before Jack could fully process the moment, Donovan stepped forward, a wide grin spreading across his face. He reached out and slapped Thunder Ray's neck, the sound echoing through the arena like a crack of thunder. The crowd gasped, expecting the horse to rear up, to lash out in anger. But Thunder Ray did nothing. He simply stood still, his eyes locked on Donovan's with a steady, almost unsettling calm. Donovan chuckled nervously, stepping back as if to reassure himself. "Tough guy, huh?" he muttered, but there was no humor in his voice. There was something in Thunder Ray's gaze that made even Donovan falter. Jack's muscles tensed, his jaw clenched as he watched. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable, and for the first time in a long while, he wanted to step forward. He wanted to call out, to intervene, to protect the horse from the casual cruelty of Donovan's slap. But something held him back, a feeling, deep in his gut, that there was more to Thunder Ray than anyone realized. The stallion took one deliberate step forward, breaking the stillness in the air. The crowd murmured, cameras clicking, but Jack could sense the change in the atmosphere. The moment had shifted. There was an unspoken tension between man and beast now, something intangible but undeniable. Jack's chest tightened as memories of his own lost mare surged within him, and for a moment he could feel the pull of something larger than just this auction. Thunder Ray lowered his head slightly, but his eyes never left Donovan. There was no fear, no panic in his gaze, only something cold, something ancient, as if the horse knew exactly who and what Donovan was. And in that moment, Jack felt a stirring, a recognition that ran deeper than words. The crowd fell silent. No one knew exactly what to make of the stallion's quiet defiance. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Jack felt his heartbeat quicken. This wasn't just a horse. This was something more, a living, breathing connection to a past that Jack had never fully let go of, and yet there was still a distance, a gap between him and the horse that he couldn't cross. Not yet, not until he figured out what it all meant. As the auction continued around him, Jack remained rooted in place, staring at Thunder Ray with a mixture of awe, fear, and longing. He couldn't tear his eyes away. This horse had awakened something in him, a part of himself that had been dormant for years. The auctioneer's voice began to fade into the background as Jack stood there, his mind racing, his body tense with the pull of the past. There was something about Thunder Ray, something that felt like fate was weaving its way back into Jack's life, something he couldn't ignore. The future, it seemed, was about to be written. Jack couldn't stop thinking about Thunder Ray. The image of the stallion's eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, haunted him long after the auction had ended. Even now, as he sat alone in his truck, parked in the dusty parking lot just outside the arena, the horse's gaze lingered in his mind. The air had grown cooler as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. Jack wiped his brow, his hand shaking slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. He could feel the weight of years pressing down on him, the years he had spent running from the pain, from the memory of Cassidy. He had tried to bury it all, the loss, the guilt, the unfinished business. But Thunder Ray, that horse, had brought it all back to the surface, stirred it all up in a way he hadn't expected. The auction had ended, but Jack wasn't ready to leave. He didn't even know why he was still there, but something about Thunder Ray's presence had drawn him back. He hadn't planned on this, hadn't expected to find himself standing at the edge of the arena, feeling the pull of something he couldn't explain. A soft knock on his truck window interrupted his thoughts. Jack looked up to find Maggie Williams standing outside, her arms crossed and her face set in a concerned expression. She had been working at the auction house for years, long enough to know the horses inside and out. But even she seemed uneasy about Thunder Ray. Jack rolled down the window, the warm night air rushing in. "What is it, Maggie?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the dust and tension. Maggie glanced around, her eyes narrowing as she leaned closer to the window. "You're still thinking about him, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Jack nodded, his gaze turning back to the empty auction ring. "I can't stop thinking about it," he said. "There's something about that horse, something I can't shake." Maggie sighed, her breath catching in the cool air. "I've been doing this for a long time, Jack. I've seen horses with fire, with spirit, but there's something about Thunder Ray. It's more than just his bloodline. It's like he's got a history, a past that he's not ready to let go of." Jack turned to her, his eyes hard. "You think he's connected to Cassidy?" he asked, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Maggie's expression softened, but she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced back at the arena, her thoughts clearly racing. "I don't know," she said finally. "But I can tell you one thing for sure. There's something more to that horse than meets the eye." Jack's pulse quickened. "I have to know what it is. I have to find out." Maggie didn't argue. She simply nodded. "Just be careful, Jack. This whole thing, it's not just about the horse. There's a lot more at stake here, and you're getting too close." Jack looked at her, his eyes hardening. "I'm not walking away from this. Not this time." Maggie's gaze flickered to the darkening horizon before she stepped back from the truck. "Just be careful," she repeated, her voice heavy with unspoken warning. As she walked away, Jack felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He knew she was right. There was more to Thunder Ray than just a prized stallion. The horse had a history, a story that Jack needed to uncover. He could feel it in his bones. The next few days were a blur. Jack found himself drawn back to the auction grounds, unable to stay away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Thunder Ray's eyes staring back at him, filled with a quiet understanding that spoke volumes. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Jack knew he had to find out where Thunder Ray came from. He started asking questions, reaching out to old contacts in the horse world, digging through old records and files. The more he searched, the more questions arose. Thunder Ray's lineage was a mystery. His bloodline had gaps, unlisted sales, and private dealings that seemed to lead nowhere. He made the call to Alden Brooks, a man he hadn't spoken to in years. Alden had been a part of Jack's life once, helping him train horses when Jack was at the height of his career. But after the accident, after Cassidy's death, Alden had vanished, retreating into his own life. Jack hadn't seen him since. "Alden?" Jack said when the line finally connected. "I need your help." Alden's voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time. "Jack? Is that really you?" "It's me," Jack replied. "I need you to look into something for me. There's a horse, Thunder Ray. I think he's connected to something in my past, something I've been trying to forget." There was a pause on the other end, and Jack could almost feel Alden's hesitation. "You're not still carrying that baggage around, are you?" Alden asked. Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, he felt the weight of the years, the guilt, the anger, the loss, all come flooding back. "I need to know the truth, Alden," Jack said quietly, "and please help me." Alden sighed. "I'll look into it, but I don't know what you'll find. Be ready for whatever comes up." Jack's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm ready. I have to be." The next few days dragged by, each one feeling longer than the last. Jack's obsession with Thunder Ray grew. He couldn't stop thinking about the horse, couldn't shake the feeling that the answers to all his questions were just out of reach. And then, finally, Alden called him back. "I've got something," Alden said, his voice low and urgent. "Thunder Ray's bloodline. It's connected to Cassidy." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had known it, had felt it in his gut, but hearing the words out loud made it real. He had to know more. But Alden wasn't done yet. "Thunder Ray isn't just any horse, Jack. He's Cassidy's foal, the one they thought died in the fire. He's the last piece of your past, and someone's been hiding him for years." Jack's world tilted. He could barely breathe. "What do you mean, hiding him?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Someone covered it up, made sure Thunder Ray was raised away from prying eyes, kept out of the spotlight. "But now he's here, and it's no coincidence, Jack." Jack felt a rush of emotions: relief, anger, confusion. He didn't know what to feel, what to do, but one thing was clear: Thunder Ray was more than just a horse. He was the key to everything Jack had lost. And now, with the truth beginning to surface, Jack knew there was no turning back. The morning sun beat down on the Sweetwater auction grounds, but the cool air in Jack's truck provided little comfort as he stared at the stack of paperwork in front of him. Alden's revelation, that Thunder Ray was Cassidy's foal, had left him reeling. And now, with the truth in front of him, he wasn't sure what to do with it. The days following Alden's phone call were a blur. Jack had spent hours combing through old records, making phone calls to contacts who might have information, but no one seemed to know the whole story. The bloodlines were as tangled as a knot, each thread leading to dead ends. The more Jack dug, the more questions he uncovered. And, with each unanswered question, his anxiety grew. Liam Donovan's presence at the auction still lingered in the back of Jack's mind. He had seen the way Donovan had strutted around the arena, his expensive boots clicking on the concrete floor, his smile like a wolf's grin. It was clear that Donovan was not the type of man who would let something slip through his fingers, especially something as valuable as Thunder Ray. But Jack wasn't going to back down. He couldn't. Thunder Ray was more than just a horse. He was a part of Jack's past, a connection to the love he had lost. And if anyone was going to claim him, it wasn't going to be Donovan. The sun was setting as Jack walked through the gates of the auction house again. He had returned to Sweetwater with a sense of purpose, and it was a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. As he crossed the dirt lot toward the stables, he couldn't shake the image of Thunder Ray's eyes, the calm, knowing gaze that had haunted him since their first encounter. It was as though the stallion had been waiting for him, just like Jack had been waiting for him. He had just reached the stables when Maggie Williams appeared from behind the barn, her face tight with worry. "Jack," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk." Jack turned to face her, his jaw clenched. "About Thunder Ray?" Maggie hesitated, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. "I've been doing some digging of my own," she said, her eyes scanning the area. "I don't think Donovan is going to let this go. He's got money, power, and connections. You're going to need more than just a gut feeling to fight him." Jack crossed his arms, leaning against the stable door. "I don't care about Donovan's money or connections," he said, his voice hard. "Thunder Ray is Cassidy's son. That's all I need." Maggie took a deep breath, stepping closer. "Jack, I get it. But Donovan's already making moves. He's got the auction house working for him, and I'm sure he's in contact with some top lawyers. This is going to get ugly. You're going to need proof, real proof, if you want to claim Thunder Ray." Jack didn't respond immediately. He knew Maggie was right. He had no legal grounds to fight Donovan. Thunder Ray's registration was still in limbo, and without concrete proof, it would all be a matter of who had the money and the legal team to back them. "I've got Alden working on it," Jack said finally. "He's tracking down the bloodline. I'll get the proof. I have to." Maggie's face softened, and she placed a hand on Jack's arm. "I know you've been through a lot, Jack, but you've got to be careful. Donovan isn't just after Thunder Ray. He's after whatever legacy you left behind when you walked away. He's going to make sure you don't get it back." Jack felt a knot tighten in his chest. He hadn't thought of it that way. Donovan wasn't just playing for the horse. He was playing for the legacy Jack had built and abandoned, for the ranch, for the land, for everything Jack had lost. And now, with Thunder Ray, Donovan saw an opportunity to reclaim it all. "I'll fight him," Jack said, his voice low and determined. "I won't let him take what's mine." Maggie nodded, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of concern and doubt, that made Jack pause. "Just remember, Jack," she said, her voice quieter now. "Sometimes the things we fight for aren't the things we truly want. Be careful what you're chasing." Before Jack could respond, a familiar voice called out from behind them. "Everything okay?" It was Alden Brooks, stepping out of the shadows of the barn. He looked older than Jack remembered, his once broad shoulders now slightly stooped, but his sharp eyes still held the same intensity. He was holding a thick envelope, his hands trembling slightly. "I've got it," Alden said, handing Jack the envelope. "I've got the proof." Jack's heart skipped a beat as he took the envelope, his fingers brushing against Alden's. For a moment, time seemed to slow. He had waited so long for this, and now, finally, the truth was within reach. With shaky hands, Jack tore open the envelope and pulled out the papers inside. His eyes scanned the documents quickly, his breath catching in his throat as he read the words. The DNA results, the bloodline analysis, and the confirmation. Thunder Ray was indeed Cassidy's foal. The fire had not claimed him. The foal had survived, hidden away, and raised in secret. Jack felt a rush of emotions flood over him: relief, joy, anger, and a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow. Cassidy's legacy, the last piece of her, was here, standing before him in the form of Thunder Ray. And now, Jack had the proof he needed to claim what was rightfully his. But that's when the reality of the situation hit him. This wasn't just about reclaiming a piece of his past. This was about fighting for everything he had lost: his legacy, his pride, and the chance to heal the wounds that had festered for years. "It's done," Alden said, his voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "Thunder Ray is yours, but the fight's not over, Jack. Donovan won't go down easy." Jack looked up at Alden, his gaze hardening. "Then let him try," he said. "I'm ready." Maggie and Alden exchanged a glance, both of them sensing the change in Jack. He wasn't the man who had walked away from it all years ago. This was a man who had found something worth fighting for, a man who had been given a second chance. And Jack Carson wasn't about to let that slip away again. The sun had barely risen when Jack arrived at the auction grounds again, his truck kicking up clouds of dust as it rolled across the empty lot. The place felt different today. The usual bustle of bidders and auctioneers was replaced by an eerie stillness, like the calm before a storm. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, his palms sweaty as he gripped the steering wheel. He was prepared for the battle ahead, but even now, standing at the threshold of a new war, he felt the weight of what he had to lose. Thunder Ray, Cassidy's son. The last piece of a life Jack had abandoned, now brought back into the light. Jack had fought for years to forget the pain, to bury the memories of the fire, the loss, and the guilt that had haunted him ever since. But now, with the horse standing at the center of his life again, Jack knew there was no escaping it. Thunder Ray was his redemption. The question was, would he be able to keep him? Jack stepped out of the truck, his boots hitting the hard ground with a resounding thud. The stables were quiet this morning, the usual hum of activity absent. As he walked toward the barn, he caught sight of Maggie, standing near the gate, her arms crossed and her eyes scanning the horizon. She was waiting for him. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice steady, but carrying the hint of concern that Jack had come to expect from her. Jack nodded, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight of the auction house in the distance. "It's time," he said, his voice low and determined. "I'm not walking away from this. Not again." Maggie hesitated before speaking again. Jack, you have to understand. Donovan's not going to give up easily. He's a man used to getting what he wants, and he won't stop until he owns Thunder Ray, and you. Jack's expression hardened. Then let him try. I've waited long enough to get this far. I'm not backing down now. As they spoke, the sound of a car engine approached from behind, breaking the silence. Jack turned to see Alden's truck pulling up, the dust trailing behind it as it skidded to a stop. Alden stepped out, his face drawn and tired. He had been working tirelessly behind the scenes, tracking down the final pieces of the puzzle. He wasn't just helping Jack reclaim his past. He was helping him rebuild it. I got the results, Alden said, holding up a manila envelope, his voice tinged with a mixture of exhaustion and urgency. It's all in here, Thunder Ray's lineage, his history. It's all connected to Cassidy. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He reached out, his hands trembling slightly as he took the envelope from Alden. The weight of it seemed to press down on him, a tangible reminder of the battle that was about to unfold. Is this everything? Jack asked, his voice rough. Alden nodded. It's everything you need. The bloodline is undeniable. The auction house can't deny it. But Donovan's already making moves to claim Thunder Ray. He's got a legal team working on it, and he's not going to let go without a fight. Jack felt his pulse quicken. He had known the fight was coming, but hearing Alden's words made it feel all the more real. Donovan wasn't just going to roll over. This would be a war, and Jack knew it was one he couldn't fight alone. We need to move fast, Jack said, his gaze shifting to Maggie. Can you get the auction house on our side? We need them to back us up. Maggie nodded. I'll handle it. I've got connections, and I know what they're looking for. But the real battle is going to happen in court. Jack turned to Alden, his expression darkening. What's the next step? Alden exhaled sharply, glancing at the manila envelope in Jack's hands. You've got what you need to fight Donovan's claims. But it's not just about paperwork. You need to make a stand. Prove that Thunder Ray belongs with you. Jack stood still for a moment, the weight of Alden's words sinking in. This wasn't just about a legal battle. It was about more than bloodlines and paperwork. It was about proving that the bond between him and Thunder Ray was real, undeniable. A bond that went beyond anything Donovan could understand. I'll prove it, Jack said, his voice steady. I'll prove he's mine. As they made their way toward the barn, the sound of a vehicle pulling up again interrupted their thoughts. Jack turned to see a black SUV with tinted windows coming to a stop near the entrance. The door swung open, and Liam Donovan stepped out, flanked by two well-dressed men in suits. The sight of him made Jack's blood boil. Donovan strode toward them with his usual swagger, a smirk playing on his lips. Well, well, if it isn't the ghost of Sweetwater's past, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Still playing in the dirt with the horses, Jack? I didn't think you'd have the guts to show up today. Jack's fists clenched at his sides, but he held his ground. I'm here, Donovan, and I'm not going anywhere. Thunder Ray's not for sale. He's not your trophy. Donovan's smirk widened. Oh, I think he is, he said, his tone mocking. You've had your fun, Jack, but it's time to face reality. You lost your chance years ago. This horse belongs to me now. Legally, he's mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. Jack stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with an edge that matched the fury in his chest. We'll see about that. Donovan's gaze flicked to Alden and Maggie, sizing them up before turning back to Jack. You've got some nerve, old man, he sneered. But I'm not here to play games. I've already got my lawyers working on this. You won't win. Jack met Donovan's gaze, his own eyes cold. "You may have money, Donovan, but you don't have the truth on your side. Thunder Ray belongs with me, and I'll fight you for him." A tense silence fell between them, the air thick with the promise of what was to come. Donovan's smirk faltered for a moment, but then he gave a half-laugh, turning away as if dismissing Jack altogether. "We'll see who wins this fight, Jack," Donovan said, his voice low and dangerous. "But it won't be you." As he climbed back into his SUV and sped off, Jack stood still, his jaw clenched. He knew this was just the beginning. The legal battle was coming, but Jack wasn't about to back down. Thunder Ray was more than just a horse to him. He was a part of the legacy Jack had lost, a piece of the past that had come back to life. And Jack Carson wasn't going to let that slip through his fingers again. The early morning air in Sweetwater was thick with humidity, the kind that hung in the atmosphere, pressing against the skin. Jack stood at the edge of the pasture, his hands in his pockets, staring out at Thunder Ray as the stallion grazed peacefully on the dewy grass. It had been a long few weeks since the confrontation with Donovan, and the battle for Thunder Ray had only just begun. But Jack felt something different now. The fear and uncertainty that had gripped him when he first realized what Thunder Ray meant to him had begun to dissipate. Now, all he felt was a quiet certainty. This horse wasn't just a reminder of what he had lost. Thunder Ray was a symbol of what he could still gain. A chance at redemption, a chance to make things right, and a chance to build a future, not just for himself, but for the legacy he thought he'd lost forever. The last few days had been a whirlwind. With the DNA results in hand, Jack and his team had gone to battle against Donovan's legal team. The fight had been fierce, the back and forth in the courtroom a test of endurance and resolve. But it wasn't just about the documents or the evidence. It was about proving a bond, one that couldn't be captured in ink on a page, one that could only be felt deep in the heart. Jack had been waiting for a breakthrough, something that would tip the scales in his favor. And then, just when he had almost given up hope, it came. Maggie had called him the night before, her voice excited and filled with relief. "We've got him, Jack," she'd said. "The auction house has agreed to back us. They're willing to testify that Thunder Ray's registration was tampered with and that Donovan's claim isn't valid. The truth is finally coming out." The news had been a lifeline. With the auction house behind him, Jack felt the tides of the battle shift in his favor. Donovan had underestimated the strength of the people who still cared about the ranch, the horses, and the land that meant so much to Sweetwater. And now, the final nail in Donovan's coffin was being hammered in. But there was still work to be done. Jack couldn't afford to get complacent. Donovan was a dangerous man, and Jack knew it wouldn't be long before the millionaire tried to pull one last move to regain control. Jack had no illusions about what was at stake. This fight was about far more than a horse. It was about reclaiming his life, his legacy, and his peace of mind. As the sun slowly climbed higher in the sky, Jack felt the weight of the past few years begin to lift. He glanced over at Thunder Ray, the stallion's coat gleaming in the morning light. The horse had a quiet dignity about him, a strength that Jack had come to admire more and more. It wasn't just Thunder Ray's lineage that made him special. It was the way he carried himself, the way he seemed to understand Jack's pain and his longing, as if he too was searching for something more. Jack walked toward the stallion, his boots crunching softly on the grass. Thunder Ray looked up, his eyes meeting Jack's with that same knowing gaze, and for a moment, Jack felt like he wasn't just looking at a horse. He was looking at a part of himself, someone who had suffered, someone who had been lost, and someone who was now ready to move forward. "Ready to go home?" Jack asked softly, his voice thick with emotion. Thunder Ray snorted and took a few steps toward Jack, as if in agreement. Jack smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and hope. This wasn't just a horse. This was the symbol of his redemption, a second chance at the life he thought he'd lost forever. Maggie arrived just as Jack approached the barn. She gave him a quick nod, her face lit with a smile that didn't quite hide the exhaustion beneath. "It's almost over, Jack," she said. "The auction board is on our side. Donovan's claims are falling apart. He doesn't have the leverage he thought he had." Jack nodded, but his gaze never left Thunder Ray. "I know," he said quietly, "but it's not just about winning. It's about making things right. And I'm not letting anyone take that away from me again." Maggie's smile softened, her eyes understanding. "You've fought hard for this, and you deserve it." Just as Jack opened the barn door, the sound of a truck engine echoed from the distance. It was a sound he knew well. Jack's heart sank slightly as the vehicle came into view. Donovan's black SUV, still sleek and imposing as it rolled up to the gates. Jack tensed, but Maggie stepped forward, blocking his path. "Let me handle this," she said, her tone firm. Jack hesitated for a moment but then nodded. This wasn't the first time Donovan had shown up to challenge him, and it wouldn't be the last. But today felt different. Maggie approached Donovan's SUV as it came to a stop. The door opened, and Donovan stepped out, his face tight with frustration. He had the same cocky demeanor, but there was something more calculated about his movements now. The sense of entitlement that had once radiated from him seemed less certain, less arrogant. "Jack Carson," Donovan said, his voice cold. "Still holding on to what's not yours, I see." Maggie didn't flinch. "It's over, Donovan," she said, her voice unwavering. "You've lost. The auction house is backing us, and your legal claims are nothing but paper thin. You can't win this." Donovan's eyes flickered with a flash of anger, but he quickly masked it with a thin smile. "You think you've won, don't you? But this is far from over. You may have the backing of a few people, but the truth is, this horse, this ranch, it was never meant for the likes of you." Maggie took a step forward, meeting his gaze with a fire of her own. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about a horse or a piece of land. This is about people, real people, and the legacies they've built. You're just a man trying to buy your way into something you'll never understand." Donovan sneered, but before he could say another word, the sound of Thunder Ray's hooves drew everyone's attention. The stallion stepped forward, his head high, his presence commanding. For a moment, the tension in the air seemed to freeze, as if the horse itself was silently declaring his choice. Jack stepped forward, his gaze locked on Donovan. "This horse has made his choice," he said, his voice calm but firm. "And I'm not letting you take him." Donovan's face twisted with fury, but it was clear he was outmatched. With a final sneer, he turned on his heel and stormed back to his SUV. He slammed the door, and the vehicle roared off into the distance, leaving only dust in its wake. Jack exhaled, his shoulders sagging as the tension drained from his body. He had won. The battle was over, and with it, his future was finally taking shape. He glanced at Thunder Ray, who had returned to grazing calmly, as if he too knew the war had been won. Jack turned to Maggie, a quiet smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's done," he said. Maggie smiled back, her eyes soft. It's just the beginning, and for the first time in years, Jack believed her. The past was behind him, and a new chapter had begun. Not just for him, but for the legacy he had fought to reclaim. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Jack Carson was ready to walk it.